I started my travel with a flight from Graz to Nice on June 5th. From there by train to the beginning of my way to Monte Carlo. Monaco, a small country in the south of France, tax haven and meeting place for the rich, yachts and casinos. No, they were not the reason for me to be there. Here is the end of the hiking trail, the Red Via Alpina. Since I decided to walk this way in the opposite direction, there was the beginning of my path. A year of preparation, planning, dreaming finally bear fruit. Finally, I'm here. I checked the path on maps and Google Earth several times, and yet I am going into the unknown. How will the weather serve me? Where will I sleep tomorrow? Where the next days? A lot of the questions. Will my legs serve me well? Could I wear this 14 kilograms on my back? 2,640 kilometers. Long way. Am I sure that I can do this? In the morning of 6th of June, I visited the Monaco Palace, and from there I went on a journey. I wanted to enroll in the registration book Via Alpina, but the gardens were closed at this hour. At first, the way led through the streets of Monte Carlo. Then up the stairs, even with an elevator, and then to the steep slope. Morning sun took care of the first sweat. When I climbed to the top of the hill, I was already really wet. The first 2 days it was really hell's heat. And I cannot imagine how I'll endure this situation. And the backpack? Yes. Indeed it was heavy. At the end of the first day, I experienced the first rush of searching for accommodations for the day. I finished my path earlier than I was planning, and in the current place, I had no accommodation marked. It was necessary to improvise. Thanks to the friendly locals, I found accommodation and laid the foundation for many subsequent relapses of that experience. The most common question for me before departure, and still is, why? What are the reasons to go on this way? The most appropriate answer is, if you have to ask such a question, you will not understand the answer. One morning, you wake up with a worm inside. Until slowly, the drilling transforms into a longing, a wish. Then it is necessary to identify where this desire comes from. How do I feel whilst I leave this thought to grow? Or if I let it vanish? The nature of man is that he challenges himself. The challenge would not be a challenge it is not greater, or not to move at least one border regardless of the previous one. I like to have unique goals. This year, I turned 40 years of my life. A milestone that raises many questions. I was hoping that walking this way will provide me with several answers. In the town Sorge, in fact, a little further along the river where I was sleeping outside, under the stars, the unbearably hot weather period ended. Although the daily rain next 10 days caused me several new problems and issues, the temperature drop accelerated my progress. In the evening, when I went to sleep, I set the clock at 5 o'clock in the morning. When the clock sounds an alarm in the morning, I was so cozy in a sleeping bag that ignored the clock. After half an hour the shower forcibly threw me up. No, the sleeping bag is not waterproof. And a proverb is true, the early bird catches the worm. In my case stays dry. I decided for the path Via Alpina because I already walked the Slovenian mountain path. I wanted a longer path for a complete disconnection. I choose between a few options, and finally, I decided for the Via Alpina. I was quite familiar with the Alps, especially from my touring ski trips. All around in Switzerland, Silvetta, Stubai, Dolomiti, Chamonix, was addressed by the values of the Via Alpina, resulting from the Alpine Convention and contained in the following. Finding opportunities to socialize with the Alpine people and their cultural diversity. Discovering Alpine natural spaces within hiking or other sustainable and non-motorized mobility activities. The spirit of integration and continuity between different countries along the Alps. The goal of long-term development and soft practice in the mountains. I meet Via Alpina and the Slovenian mountain trail because some part of the Slovenian path is the same. Regardless of the other options were Alps much closer and financially accessible, although the whole expenses were far from small. There is no full waterproof gear. And at the same time permeable to moisture from the inside. When it rains you are wet due to rain or own sweat. Especially when walking on the wet grass, no shoes can retain water outside. When you walk a few hours in wet shoes the skin starts to wriggle. Cracks can be very deep and are painful and itchy. On the edges of the cracks, the blisters start to form. The best help is the cream of deer fat, as it repels water. However, it is necessary to regularly reapply, because the effect fades after a few hours. You have seen the photo of such legs. However, from that day forward, I no longer had blisters and soaked legs. In Italian Alps, on a rainy day, I met this goat shepherd. I was alone all day. In the afternoon when the rain temporarily stopped I heard from a forest loud clattering. 2 shepherd dogs ran to me and checked me as there is their habit. After them, a flock of goats with the chimes and elderly shepherd. I was inside the flock and I had to wait. When the shepherd came up to me we spoke a few words. He only spoke Italian, that I don't know, but enough to share from and to where I'm going. We also used our hands. What struck me were his eyes. From his bright eyes were shining peace and contentment, that you do not see with the modern man, the consumer. His eyes were springs of joy that has poured and inspiring me in the following days. Like that should be all of us, that's intended for us. But in a hurry and rush, our eyes are repeatedly pond of dissatisfaction and non-fulfillment. How is possible that one simple goat shepherd is much happier than the saturated consumer? You answer that by yourself. If it rains all day is exhausting because everything is wet. Thus, there is no dry space where you can sit or lie down. Or even put down the backpack. So I sang of joy when this day started. Sunny day and for the first time more alpine environment. That's how I imagined Via Alpina. I wasn't too concerned about miles that were left to walk. How far I have come today. What's the plan? Except at the end. I lived one day after another. I tried to savor every moment of this privilege that I had, to be every moment in nature and in the beautiful mountains. Solitude was not an obstacle, rather helped to meet with me, with my life. To see from a distance. To recognize and let go of whatever was not meant to carry with me anymore. Clamps and fences set by others or me fallen one after another. Also, masks were falling off. And I was there in the middle of vast mountains, alone, as I am. And that it's very liberating. A man by nature is not an unfortunate creature. Happiness and joy are planted in our hearts. But in everyday life, we are constantly drowning our hearts under a multitude of concerns. On the path, concerns are shrunk only to the basics. What and where I would eat, drink, and sleep, and if I would have a signal to hear with my wife. The voyage and walk become the way of life. The whole path is really long, but every day you walk only a bit. A tiny part that you are capable of doing on that day. According to the well-being, weather, and beauty of nature. Whenever it was a very beautiful nature I was sailing and walking was easy. There were some parts that I didn't like, and more or less, I dragged myself through that. When they were over, the happiness came from completing them. My normal mountain workday was changing over time. Early waking before 6 o'clock was initially normal. In June, the early sunrise provided morning light and I didn't want to lose time. In August, I was a little tired of persuading for early breakfast. Even on mountain huts, you can't count on breakfast before 7 o'clock. Followed by 10 to 12 hours of walk. Sometimes more, sometimes less. Conditioned by overall feeling, weather conditions, and the possibility of spending the night. At the end of every day, finding a place to sleep. In the beginning, I was sometimes sleeping outside, but not in August and later. In the meantime, I photographed a lot. I took over 12,000 photos. If I found on the path a hut or store, or it was still something in my backpack, I had a meal. Otherwise, dinner was the main meal of the day. If I had a GSM signal or Wi-Fi, I called my wife every day. In the evening, I chose photos and prepared posts for Facebook. The smartphone was then uploaded pictures when it has access to the network. I chose photos to represent what every stage of the path brings, nevertheless, if they were perfect or not. Although the motivation came primarily from the heart, it was encouraging to monitor responses on Facebook. Daily I walked 15 to 40 kilometers and up to 3,500 meters in altitude. Counting only upwards. Of course they contradict, more height means less length. Path avoids the highest peaks, it just leads to the passes. The highest pass was 2,900 meters in height. The trail is very diverse. At a short distance from 300 meters above sea level climbs up to 2,800 meters and on the other side back to the valley. Multiply that by a few times in a row. The real test of nerves. My wife Katya visited me every 14 days. Every visit was a holiday. Besides her, I was happy with clean clothes and various home food treats. Throughout the whole trip, despite regular visits, I afforded only 3 days without a walk-in backpack. Mostly I just finished the day before and delayed the next. I am really grateful to her for all paths with a variety of adventures on the way. A couple of times friends and my parents joined her. On the way, I used 5 pairs of shoes. During each visit, I changed shoes, that was thoroughly dried and, if necessary, visited a shoemaker. 3 pairs were to be scrapped or for flower pots. 2 pairs I used just for 14 days and are still usable for some trips. Nevertheless, all shoes regardless of the brand were worn out after 650 kilometers. I admit that at the beginning I was not in such physical shape as I would like. I missed some training because of other preparations. But you replace that in the first 14 days. carrying 14 kilograms backpack every day for 10 hours. Worthwhile. It was mental preparation to know why you want to do it. To set your goals and intentions. So in the tough moment, you know why you insist. Study of the way was also important. All the time I was using data prepared in advance, especially for accommodations. The choice of the correct equipment is also crucial. Lightweight and useful. Clothes, footwear, equipment for bad weather, overnight stays, first aid, creams to relieve all sorts of problems. Protection and care from the sun, bruises, blisters, insects. Also, the technique, GPS, cameras, cell phone, spare batteries, chargers, cables, and so on. When you set a big, seemingly unreachable goal, it is important that you are faithful to your decision. Do not underestimate any step, which is done in the direction of the target. Maybe it is an insignificant or weary hard, or made with great resistance. All steps are needed to get to the finish line. But in the end, the little steps count more, because they make the goal even more deserving. On such a journey, and of course, every other way is very important, that we take the time to enjoy the moment. The goal is important, but even more important is the way which leads us to this goal. And all that this path offers us. Views, small joys, tiny surprises, rest, sun rays, meetings, and so on. On the way, I didn't have many choices for selecting the food. Especially at the beginning, in the south, where a half-pension system on mountain huts is established. I ate everything I got on a table, with as much bread as possible if it was available. When had to choose, I chose according to the current mood. When I got to some store, I mainly bought fruits. I used a lot of my own body energy stores. Several times I ate much less when food stocks ran out, as it was my daily consumption. I did not pack a lot of food stock in the backpack. Except occasionally when I was too careless in the store. Otherwise, I rely on the local catering offer. In my everyday life, I am not a big fan of sweet drinks. On this trip, however, I was very fond of orange drinks and all that had the orange flavor, and it was sweet, Fanta, Orangina, and so on. When you walk for more than 10 hours and you're still planning to push a little further, there's no better energy drink than beer and some other sweet drink. In fact, Radler, an explosion of energy. Sugar is consumed right away, alcohol a little later. I was very pleased with some homemade treats, which my wife brought me every 14 days. Especially domestic salami and something from the home kitchen, fried chicken, stuffed peppers, and so on.
Topla voda. Kakšen privilegij.
Hot water. What a privilege. Every time you open a tap and hot water flows. Be aware that this is a privilege.
Se zavedate, da je to privilegij.
I was posting every day on Facebook and several times reported live to one of the Slovenian radios to the show Nature's Experience. A summary of the first report is followed. Then there was a period of bad weather when for more than a week, blessed me every day and soaked me, but always surrounded by a beautiful landscape, beautiful mountains and beautiful nature. and a bunch of such tiny blessings, who accompanied me on the go. They raised me and pushed me forward. I also met some traveling friends. We just split up with Chris from Austria, who is also hiking Via Alpina. Especially last week I walked over very high passes, somewhere between 2,500 and 2,800 meters of height, where there was still quite a lot of snow. There, some hikers I met on the go had several problems. Me, on the other side, thank God, I did not have any problems with snow. Water. Water is certainly the main asset of the Alps. In practically every village there is at least one fountain, where water flows non-stop. In some places even in every house. Not to mention the many sources, streams, rivers, and so on. On the way, I drank a lot of water. Usually, I only took 1.5 liters with myself. I poured everything else on the spot from the mentioned water sources. I was never thirsty or had any digestive problems. European politicians, be careful what agreements you accept and what laws you write. Water must remain a public good.
V letu, preden sem se odločil za ta pohod,
In the year before I decided to go on this march, somewhere in the depths of my heart I heard the voice that was asking me, "Who are you? Who are you?" Several times a day. In the morning, in the evening, and in between when I had a little time for myself. So long that I started to ask this question loudly myself, "Who am I?" We quickly answer this question with some of the everyday functions role that we play. Singer, mountaineer, programmer, husband, a friend, and so on. Which just somehow describes some of the roles we play in our lives. But that crucial question, who am I? However, it is not answered. Who am I at this moment? Who am I in my essence, in my heart? If I take all these adjectives away, who am I? What's left? I can't give an answer to this question at this time.
na to vprašanje mogoče niti v tem trenutku ne znam dati.
To the young people, I want to send a message, that life does not only revolve around screens and computers. But on my way, I used my smartphone a lot. It's true that there's some kind of conflict. I never claimed that we need to withdraw all the screens and computers and live without, like in old days. However, I say that the computer and the screen are very limited media. Our body has 5 senses with which we experience everything around us. If we add to this the spiritual component 6. With a computer, we achieve to stimulate 2 senses in very limited quality, vision and hearing. It's completely different when you are in the middle of nature with all your body and magnificent senses that we inherited from our ancestors, which they lived in nature and with nature and feel surrounding through all senses. Not only in some comfort zone but also in the extreme. Heat, cold, loud thunder, wind, watercourse, strong sun. This is a real experience. It has more value if you go to some nice place and you feel it in the fullness of your senses and awareness. Or if you see the pictures of the most beautiful place on earth with a computer. Yes, it could be a nice experience too, but not at the expense of the first one. Not as a substitute. The same is in communication with people. At that time I was very much separated from my wife. I just can't imagine if I could not call and write SMSs. These communication paths are very limited, but if there are no others, this is 100% better than nothing. But how valuable is one touch and one whisper in the ear, compared to 100 SMSs? In everyday life in haste, we use the wrong communication channels because we don't take time. How wrong? It's about the right balance. With the computer we limit ourselves. We accept a lower form of communication with people and nature. But we are far more than pictures, sounds, words. For overnight stays outdoor I only had essential equipment. Sleeping pad, sleeping bag, and raincoat, which could also be a tent wing or tarp. I gave up the tent. Mostly the overnight stay was very romantic, in beautiful places, but also uncomfortable, hard bed, mosquitoes, condensed moisture or some Capricorn's night races just past my camp. I was always with great pleasure and eagerly awaited meeting with a technical team, as I affectionately named my wife in this walk. When we meet, the efforts of the past day were quickly forgotten. But the goodbyes were so much more difficult. Every new goodbye was more difficult. To refresh my memory of my wife, I asked her to take a selfie and send it to me. She has never done this before. And when she finally succeeded, she sent the picture to the company with whom she negotiated for t-shirts instead of to me. The manager thought that Katja was really very satisfied with an agreement to send her a kiss. Arrival at Chamonix, and fantastic views of Mont Blanc, White Mountain, reminded me of two things. To all the wonderful mountain experiences on the slopes around Chamonix, which I explored with touring skis, and that behind me, is already the distance of the Slovenian mountain path. 600 kilometers. A nice piece of the path was behind me, but there was still staggering 2,000 kilometers in front of me. 2,640 kilometers or 1,640 miles and 140 kilometers of ascent is really unimaginable distance if it does not connect with any known distances. If I would walk along the roads, I could get from Vilnius, across Istanbul, to the border with Syria. And in the meantime climb 42 times from Everest Base Camp to the top of Mount Everest and back. Via Alpina makes a tribute round against Mont Blanc, the highest mountain in the Alps, which coincides with the Trail Tour du Mont Blanc, which is pretty much besieged, with people from all over the world. A wide range of languages can be heard here. This is a burden, especially on the path and also on the huts along this route. It's very difficult to get some kind of accommodation if you don't reserve in advance. So I had to sleep in nature last night because there was no room left in the cottage. At this moment, I am in wonderful shape, I have no problems, the weather is nice, that's why I expect in the next days I will make good progress. The most common animal I've seen on my way was marmots. You find them everywhere from the Savoy Alps, across the entire Alpine arc, and also in Slovenian Alps. But they have very different habits. Some warn the arrival of an intruder with one loud whistle, while others don't stop whistling until your getaway. Elsewhere you cannot hear them, they just retreat close to their holes, so that in need are able to escape as soon as possible. Sometimes they scared me when they were unexpectedly whistled nearby. Switzerland was from all countries most positively surprised. There are things really arranged. The arrangement of mountain and hiking trails. Mowed grass. Marking. The benches along the trail are really admirable. I should also mention the transport infrastructure. Trains and a postal bus, which every day reach the smallest village, with a great attitude with just a few inhabitants, several times in a day. I noticed that even ordinary people are aware of the importance of the common good and within their power with their actions contribute to maintaining orderliness. In Switzerland, it does not happen that foresters leave felled trees on the road. I had to crawl or climb everywhere else. Let me also mention trust in people's honesty. In Switzerland, a system of trust is used. In a hotel from a floor refrigerator that is not locked, you can take as many drinks as you need and in the morning you'll settle in the reception. There are also fully stocked huts without a caretaker. When you come everything is self-service, and then you also make a bill and pay in the wooden box. There are many more examples. In Switzerland, I met very nice and open people, who are willing to help. Above all, I had a feeling in Switzerland, that they were interested in my story and me. It happened on the road that I was lifting my heavy backpack when the old woman with a crutch came near me and she asked me if I need help. It is also true that Switzerland is much more expensive than in other countries. Already prices are high, but even more due to the unfavorable euro and Swiss franc exchange rate. I argue that the majority in the Western or European civilization is too spoiled. This applies to both adults and children. This indulgence robs us of gratitude. Everything that is given to us, the everyday things, we take for granted, and we lose our gratitude. Let these be material things, hot water, bunk bed, warm home, electricity and so on. Or various services, wash dishes, clean clothes, clean flat, services that others do for us. If there is no gratitude, there is no happiness. And then we need more and more substitutes for happiness. When we give up or lose our privileges, warm water, small daily amenities, we find that they are in fact a gift, and gratitude is restored. I noticed that the paths are much more arranged here, especially near the cities. When you come to town, or you leave, everything is mowed, the benches are every few meters. So that it is hard to advance because these benches are so tempting. On the other hand, in the mountains, Via Alpina in Switzerland follows some of the much more demanding routes, as in France or Italy. You can also find some ropes and wedges. Paths are more technically demanding. Above all, many times paths started straight into the hill. Aletsch Glacier is the longest glacier in the Alps. Its length is 23 kilometers and covers an area of 120 square kilometers. Its highest thickness reaches at Concordia, where 3 glaciers meet. The thickness of the glacier exceeds 1 kilometer. Water from the glacier flows into the Mosa River, which is dammed and powers a huge power plant that you have seen earlier. A century ago, this glacier was much bigger and longer. The consequences of global warming are very obvious. Now I'm coming into a part of the path that goes more or less along the border. So I'll be some time in Switzerland and some time in Italy. And then the path will turn around, countries will change. Namely, Switzerland, Austria, then Austria and Italy again. On Monday, my hiking friend Primoz joined me. And he'll be with me for the next 2 weeks on Path Via Alpina. One of the main purposes of my journey is to promote long-distance hiking along the connecting routes, such as Via Alpina or the Slovenian mountain path. This way of hiking is quite different, as if we were going someplace for a week. And there, from comfort of civilization, we visit various points in the area. If you hike from a hut to a hut, or especially if you spend the night in nature, you will have to load everything you need into a backpack, and then carry it all with you 8, 10, or 12 hours a day. Believe me that you will quickly recognize what you need so much that you wish to carry. This is very healing and above all liberating. In Europe is a system of huts and other mountain tourist infrastructure very diverse, and allows hike-through ventures with much lighter backpacks than elsewhere in the world. Part of the path that we walk this week visits valleys that descend very, very low, and then on the other side, you have to climb back very high. From 300 meters up to 2,300 meters and then repeat that again and again. So, in one day you make between 2,000 and 3,000 meters of altitude gain per day and the same amount at the descent. Something you got so hard, you lose so quickly. Today we crossed the Italian border, and we're right at the place named Isola. The name is similar to a place in Slovenia near the final destination. If I make a little joke, Now just a little to the Piran and we are home.
Yes, the touch of familiarity is here, but you have a lot of path before you.
In this remote part of the Alps, where there are not many visitors, it's obviously not worth that. Staff is constantly present in a hut, so you find fully stocked mountain huts that works on a self-service principle. You come and become a hut manager for one day. You cook dinner, you use as much as you need, and in the end, you make a bill and pay in a wooden box. I wish that one day would be such trust and honesty, that there would be such things possible also in Slovenia. The same principle is also used in hotels, farm shops, and many different places. Serve yourself and pay for what you used. And then there are those days. Rainy days. You know from the very beginning that they will come. You think you're ready for them too, but it's hard to start walking in the morning because you know, you'll be wet all day. Nevertheless, I accept those days with gratitude. Especially because they open your heart, that you can be grateful for all those nice sunny days. After 14 days and many adventures, Primoz left me in Maloja. The dynamic was different and change was welcome at this time of a shared walk. But before me, it was the other half of the path. That kind of hiking also allows you to be a long time in nature and with yourself. The excessive information inflow of everyday life stops. Walking is very meditative. Our heart, the soul, has the ability to calm down, especially when you get used to the travel mode. In everyday life, a modern man has very little time for silence. And that's why many things go by us unresolved, unfelt, or uncleared. And then the information flow turns around. Subconscious begin to send interesting things. Beautiful ones and those that we sweep under the carpet. When you are away from your everyday life, it can also be easier or less affectioned, because you can look at things from the side and see, not only yourself but also others, to face some problems or your mistakes. And then you leave them by the path. And you're lighter. And you just fly. No matter how heavy is the backpack. Whoever thinks that on this kind of pilgrimage, you are going to escape from your own life, is wrong. It is necessary that you meet it. When you are done with these tough things, there come various beautiful memories. Memories for which you were no longer aware of. From deep inside. Then there is peace, and it doesn't matter what challenges the way brings on. Regardless of whether everything is according to plans, you're taking everything for good. And this peace is visible, others can see it. Also, the animals you encounter start to behave differently. It's really a thorough disconnect, which I recommend. You don't have to choose such a long journey. For a start, 1 week is enough. My wife in all this plays several important roles, offers moral support, as the representative of the main donor, family budget, manages all logistics and preparation for visits. So, it makes a lot of kilometers every 14 days. My niece Clara is helping me with my Facebook page. She translates everything into English because there are also many foreign language followers and they constantly demand that everything is also translated into English, and I don't have time to do it. I would also like to mention my colleagues, that does all this work in my job instead of me.
So, you've mentioned your wife and it would be interesting to learn more from her.
We had one such experience when he was walking Slovenian mountain trail. We found out that we were in that month much more connected than on a daily basis. I immediately knew that 3 months is a little different story than a month, but it seemed to me that he was so fond of this and that he nourished the idea for a long time, that it is right that I support him in any way. I am so independent that I will manage myself in this time. Now I have visited him for the 4th time, and I have quite a few of these adventures behind me. This time, I had really a big misfortune with the car. First, with mine the service light started to LED, then I wanted to take his, which has been standing on a domestic parking lot for 2 months. The problems were with the ignition, the battery was discharged. With the help of our friend, we managed to fix the problem. But on the way, the car still caused some troubles. So I realized that also, abroad people are very kind. And they like to help. So I luckily came home, with a little more adrenaline compared to previous trips.
And you're a little bit more familiar with cars and batteries now, right?
Yes, now I would know how to replace it myself. After 2 months I noticed that he is a little lonely even though he had this friend for some time now, but, you know, when a man walks, he deals a lot with himself, various thoughts come from the heart, and it's very nice if you can share it with someone, not just by telephone. Because we can hear each other almost every day, via the internet or phone. Personally, however, it's different. It seems to me that Igor is on the way is experiencing a revival. After 1 month he found out that his home is his greatest treasure. It's nice to hear such things. Every 14 days, when I come around at his new ideas, how he will do differently in his life. It's nice to follow this and be witness to this.
At the beginning of my journey, I was not burdened by how fast I am going and how many kilometers is still left to the end. Depending on the weather, I set my daily goal, which was sometimes conditioned by the possibility of accommodation. Especially in the second part of August and in September, when I already avoided outdoor sleeping. But my wife was quite involved in the plan, and she was pretty worried if I would be able to reach the finish line in time. My first night hike happened on the way from Oberstdorf. My wife ordered me to hurry up, that we will be able to meet at the agreed place. And I had to pull on, even though I didn't know where I will find accommodation. I did not find any accommodation, because it is forbidden to stay overnight in the Valley Oi, so I had to get to the hut of Prince Leopold. A little under the pass I watched the sunset, pulled to the top, and then into the moon shade with the headlight. The path was running down, up, between gorges and mud. A little before 2300 hours I was at the hut. Fortunately, I got a bed. But after 15 hours of walking, I could not fall asleep right away. On a sunny day, a little unusual dressed young man caught me. When we spoke a few words, I found out he was an American from Minnesota. He had some problems with navigation, and he asked me if he could join me. Chris spent a few days with me. One day, when we obviously already discussed all the topics, he announced that he was going further. His departure was unexpected, as was his arrival. I was really lucky that I practically started walking in nature and that I spent my youth in the meadows, forests, banks, trees, gorges, and abysses. It hurts when I see how far from nature village children live, let alone urban. I put all parents in the heart, to enable children to learn how to move, and walk in nature on various terrains in early youth. When they are grown up, they will never be able to obtain the appropriate movement skills, even though they want it. The latest researches show the direct connection between intelligence and movement. You want your child to be successful at school? Take it to nature to consume excess energy there. Gratitude is certainly the emotion that marked my path the most. First of all, of course, to anyone who made this way possible. To my wife, my colleagues, and everyone who financially supported me with their gifts. I was grateful, and I am still, for all moral support, for all good desires, prayers, and encouragements. The presence of good wishes is deeply felt on the way. Especially when you, by a miracle, rescued from some very sensitive situations. I was grateful in good and nice moments and as well as in difficult moments. I knew in every moment that it's a privilege, that I can wander across the Alps for so long. Every day, I was grateful for every luckily walked kilometer of that day and in total. For every lucky step. For all the beautiful views, for all meetings with people. Nature. God. Individualism that has crept into our civilization destroys our gratitude. We can no longer see others. We have a feeling that we have earned all that we have. We work hard. So it belongs to us. It's our right. Why should I be grateful then? If you do not experience everything you have as a gift, it is very difficult to feel gratitude. And how hard it is to share. That's why barricades and fences are needed. Not just those on the border. Also around most of the new houses. At this point, I would specifically mention France, where the word privat is taped all over. Including in the middle of forests and hiking trails. That life and everything we have is a gift. We will have to learn again. From people who have much fewer material goods, and they were born somewhere else in the world, and still know how to be grateful. In early September, I had some bad weather again, and the first snow whitened the mountains. That was some special atmosphere. Many places across the Alps impressed and enriched me with wonderful views. One such place is Dolomiti, where I almost could not put down the camera. Snow again added its magic there. My paths were mostly lonely. Except for some sections of the route, around Chamonix and in September through the Austrian Alps, Dolomites and on the Carnian route, where there were many visitors. I didn't reserve the huts in advance, so I was very happy because they always found some hidden corner at an angle below the roof that I could sleep in warm and dry conditions. In September, the huts were surprisingly full. Generally, I do not like crowds, so the walk around the Traiste was a great shock, because it was crowded. That's why, despite its magnificent beauty, I rushed towards the Carnian Alps. I started walking with 95 kilograms and the weight of the backpack was 14 kilograms. Before Dolomiti, my backpack lost some weight, and if I add to my 18 kilograms of lost weight, 4 kilograms of a backpack. Those 22 kilograms were quite a boost for my traveling speed. I passed the Carnian Alps halfway faster than normally expected. I have gained a few days and my goal, to arrive by September 20th at the destination in Trieste, became viable. If bad weather would not slow me down in Slovenia, I would leisurely walk to the finish line. Thus, in the last days of the journey, I had to walk overnight. I spent one day in the Carnic Alps, with an English hiker, who for his early retirement walked European Path E4 in 6 months. Now he is walking around the various mountains, and for the hobby writes guides for Cicerone. We exchanged a lot of experiences and adventures. The Carnian High Path ends at Thurl, near the Slovenian border. From Thurl, I started my way in the morning in solitude and walked along the road and forest roads. On the last ascent, people were coming from all sides. I didn't know what is happening. When the Slovenian folk music was heard from the top, I was confused even more. At Tramea I came straight on the day, when it was a festival of 3 countries. Traditional meeting of 3 neighbor countries, Slovenia, Austria, and Italy. In Podkoran, my wife, who accompanied me for 2 days, left home. Despite the bad weather forecast, my mountain friend Boris joined me for 2 days. The next morning in Tamar began with strong showers, which have intensified during the day. The path to Thru-Hike Pass was unrecognizable. Often the path turned into a stream, and waterfalls from the slopes sprayed on us. Well, I afford canyoning sometimes, this time without neoprene clothes. The peak of showers was reached in the afternoon when we have sheltered in the cottage at the spring of the Soka River. Nevertheless, we pushed towards the next mountain pass. After 10 minutes, we were again wet to the skin. We looked at each other, no words spoken, and turned back towards the cottage. The staff at the cottage was all the time nervous, looking at the river, which was just about to cross over the banks. Then the water burst into the cottage cellar and I had to sleep despite the sound of a noisy water pump. Boris helped to dry out the draining water. The next day, the weather calmed down, but the consequences of this flood were everywhere. Bad weather has caught me again, on the way to the top of Mountain Rodica. The powers of nature were too strong this time, and I was forced to retreat to the valley. Although that it poured like crazy, and it was a heavy fog, I would go on. But the wind was blowing with such power, that shifted me badly. I tried a few times to cross a mountain top, but it almost pushed me into the abyss. The next day, I tried again, but the wind was still too strong. These Bohinj mountains have something against me. 8 years before, when I was walking the Slovenian mountain path, I also have to wait 1 day to let me pass. This time I had to walk around them through the forest road, which crosses on the Bohinj side. The last part of the path through Slovenia has passed marked with interesting meetings. Some people recognized or expected me. Because I wanted to spend the last day in the company of friends, I had to hurry up. And I had to walk late into the night. Local mountaineers escorted me by night over Mountain Javornik, and in the morning to Prijala, and also helped me in other ways. Thanks again. Friends joined me on the last day, and escorted me part of the way. I was wondering all day long, when the euphoria of emotions will emerge and how I feel at the end of reaching my goal. But there was no euphoria. There were many small but very valuable meetings, handshakes, hugs, which have provided a pleasant and homely atmosphere. Marco, a native from Koper, escorted me to the finish line, and I did not have time to deal too much with the last kilometers on asphalt. The finish itself was not really very important, or nothing more than all the remaining moments on the path. I'm glad about it. Every moment counts, and without previous, there is no next. In some way, I achieved the goal already in Bermuda with my friends. The finish line was only a confirmation. I hope you will get the inspiration, based on my story, to realize, or at least try to reach some of your own seemingly unreachable dreams. Dream your dreams. Dare to set impossible goals. And then with small, persistent steps, go bravely toward the finish line. And don't forget to enjoy every moment on the go. Even if you don't reach your goals, the way to your dreams will enrich you. And the awareness that you have the courage to try, will comfort you. The people are many times like glaciers. We carry with us the resentment, disability, failure, fears, and all kinds of excess luggage. Even nice things can pin us to the past, and prevent us to fully experience the present moment, as it is. Along the way, I left a lot of redundant luggage myself. I wish you some kind of global warming.
Namen projekta Via Alpina je tudi spodbujanje.
To conclude, the purpose of my project is also to promote spending leisure time in nature. That's why I am encouraging you once again. Go into nature. And above all, at that time switch off your mobile phones. For nothing more important than what needs to happen between you and nature won't happen at that time. Open your heart. Open your eyes. Listen. And accept that in that particular moment, nature and everything you see around you is there just for you. Enjoy.
Vse, kar vidite okrog sebe, tam samo zaradi vas. Uživajte.